Kristin Molitor. Welcome to the Transforming Hearts podcast, brought to you by the Institute for Ministry Formation. We believe that transforming the church starts with transforming hearts. Join us as we explore ministry through the lens of relationship and accompaniment. Together, let's journey towards growth, healing, and transformation. Hello and welcome to the Transforming Hearts podcast. This is Kristin with the Institute for Ministry Formation. And today we have a really special guest on our show. We have Alex Rodriguez, who is founder and consultant for Avila Coaching and Consulting. So Alex really journeys and walks alongside clergy. So we're going to hear a little bit about her ministry. And Alex is also a student in our spiritual direction program right now. So lots of relationships and engagement there. And so Alex, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself and then share a little bit about Avila Coaching, what it is you do, and how it really got started.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is such a gift. Well, big context of my story is that I was a missionary with Focus for 7 years. So that was like a lot of my professional development and personal development was in the context of Focus, which was such a gift to me. And how this transpired into Avila, my business. When I was with Focus, I got to obviously accompany people in a lot of ways. I was a team director, so in charge of a team of missionaries. And so that piece specifically, I got to do a lot of coaching and I got to do a lot of accompaniment of like, you're doing well, how do we get to even better? Looking at obstacles, how do we work through those? And also with the priests and campus ministers and getting to strategize with them and talk about greater mission and then walk with them individually. So when the Lord had called me out of Focus and asked me to move back home to Hastings, Nebraska, I didn't know what that was going to look like or what it was going to be. And my parish priest reached out to me and he had asked the question of, Alex, like, how do we make disciples in a parish? I was like, I love that you're asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what does that mean to you, Father? Like, that's a word that gets thrown around. And so as I heard more of like what his hopes were for his people, for his priesthood and what that looked like, I had a mentor of mine actually who was talking to me at the time. And we had done some strategic planning in the past at the Newman Centers I worked at. And she was like, Alex, this is how it works. Like you can just offer a contract to accompany him. I was like, oh my gosh, what? Okay. And so I did. I talked to Father and I was like, I hear your goals are this. I think I can help you in these ways. And he said, great, let's do it. So from there, like within 6 months, I had multiple contracts that started up from word of mouth. And so really, I feel like the Lord actually started this business, which was in his great generosity. I think I would have been too scared if he would have asked me to go out and coach priests. But so I've got to do some like strategic planning, but then also one-on-one coaching wherever the priest maybe feels stuck as an administrator and wants to claim his spiritual fatherhood, can help navigate that space through like one-on-one coaching or helping them develop leadership teams in those ways.
That's really exciting. I was enjoying looking at your website and all that you offer, and just even your mission is so beautiful. We accompany priests to more freedom as spiritual fathers through one-on-one coaching. We can partner to uncover your own leadership while empowering your team to be on mission with you. So, Alex, what does that kind of mean to you? We accompany priests to more freedom as spiritual fathers. Like, where can they experience more freedom? What does that look like in your coaching and consulting?
Yes. Oh, okay. So I'm going to actually even pull back to like my transformation in leadership
Okay.
is like what inspired this of when I was directing missionaries, like the voices that would come up of this is like high stakes. This is for the salvation of souls. Like we have to do this well. Like if we don't do it well, who will? And just this from a good place, right? A good intention, was just this intense pressure, and everything was high stakes, and there was like little room for error, not imposed by anyone else, but inside of me or the enemy or whatever. And this was a big transformation that happened for me of this like, wow, I'm operating out of like a fearful place
Mm.
and not free. And then that would translate and affect those around me, right? My teammates would feel that. Like, Alex, you say I have freedom to fail, but I don't really feel it. It's like, oh, what is that? And so finding out of like where I was operating out of fear or control wasn't begetting freedom for others. And so when I take this into, as I'm an accompanying priest, it's I've found to be very similar threads of my story where a priest, be it that they've been actually outwardly told, like, you can't mess up, or just inwardly, there's some sort of pressure there of like, don't mess up. You need to do it all right. If you don't do it, who will? All of these things that create this pressure of and inform an image of how they ought to show up in their priesthood that is really confining and it
Mm.
really yeah, it's just a sphere based. And so I think it's unpacking, and some of those might be practical things. Like it would be helpful for you, Father, if someone gave you some pointers of how to run an effective meeting, right? There might actually just be some skills that could be helpful. But there also might be a belief system underneath there that
Mhm.
you're operating out of that you're not sure of yet. And so it's that a space in between of the like, what's more freedom? Of like for you to become the priest that the Lord has ordained you to
Yes.
be. Like
Mhm.
that's who it is. Like whatever that looks like for you is going to be different than any other priest, right? And so to kind of let those desires breathe a little bit, right? And like find out what those scripts are that are keeping you stuck. And what would those look like if they were rewritten or some truth was in there?
That's such a beautiful ministry. I just think of an accompaniment in general and how when we pour so deeply into one person, it can just unlock their heart in beautiful ways, right? That like we may be stuck in woundedness and a belief system, but we're running like so fast and so furious and just like getting stuff done that unless we pause and do a heart check-in, like we can't really understand why is it that I do what I do? Or what would it look like to be someone fully alive or to really operate in my giftedness? And yet, it's not really until we open up our heart in relationship through the eyes of another who can really see us, validate us, affirm us, speak into us, or see blind spots, that we can really flourish. And so I think like what you're doing with clergy is just so important because I have a lot of experience in the diocesan work, and I know priests are very overburdened. They have a lot going on. They minister to a lot of people. And yet, I don't think they often get the attunement and the intention that they need to unlock their heart. So,
Oh, yes, that even oh, this is not exactly what you said, but this like the space to pause and get curious. Like it takes so much to slow down and to then have some silence and to go to those places. And like you can do that by yourself, and that is good and holy. But the difference when someone is with you to pause and get curious, it's really lets there be a little bit more space for some honesty, right? If like we can tell
mhm,
ourselves like pause, oh, I feel overwhelmed. Okay, great. I ought not to be. Or and you can just like dodge out of it. But
yeah.
if someone is sitting with you, holding that space and note reflecting back to you like what they see, like there's like that attunement that changes things, right? Like it helps you to engage in your story and engage in reality of what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, because I love how you said we can dodge out of it. And so, like, I do that even to myself. Like I can have like maybe an overwhelming feeling or something like, oh, I'm just like really overwhelmed or stressed out. Oh, I shouldn't be. And you just kind of put a quick judgment on it and you kind of like weasel
Mhm.
out of it. But until you bring that into relationship with someone, and I love how you say like they really hold space because within that feeling or belief, there is a story, there's a part of you that needs attention. We can't just like cut these parts off, but that they need love and care in order to really be integrated into our system.
Yeah, and I think that that's something oftentimes um, is where it's like it's good and holy that there's an authority of the priesthood, but sometimes that can be a disconnect then from lay people
Mm,
and have a hard time connecting, right? In a space where like it's okay for father to not be okay, right? There's some usually can be an air around that that isn't all right. So I do think that there is the holding the space. I just think there's just like different memories that are coming to my mind of like working with priests and even in just checking in at the beginning of a meeting and like, how are you coming into this meeting? And they might rattle off some things that are going on and they'll like me to offer a hand over my chest and like a compassionate look saying, Father, that must be really hard.
mm,
And like watching them take that in.
yes.
And it's like, oh, wow, actually, yeah, it has been hard. And like, okay, yeah, what's that like? Before I don't want to jump to the information in the meeting and the strategy things, but to like have space to like, I don't know if anyone's really been with you in the fact that you just jumped around from multiple funerals to a wedding to an anointing of someone who you don't know if they're dying yet or not. It's like just practically, that's a lot of humanity to be holding.
In your heart.
Yes.
And really, like, I'm just learning more and more. Our hearts remember, even if we are moving fast and moving furiously, like it's taking in data, the sadness of the funeral, the lot, and then the pressure to maybe have some sort of uplifting homily that ministers to everybody, and then go in and have a homily for a married or excuse me, a wedding, right? And how that would be so different. And the heart is engaging each one differently, and it's affecting you, it's affecting your heart, and to hold space so that the heart can speak and breathe and reveal itself and say like, I'm not just a human doing,
Yes.
I'm a human being, and I bring my heart into this space and my heart matters.
And that's actually the gift of what you, Father, bring to the table is your
Is
heart.
your heart.
That's actually what your people want. And like what the Lord wants for you to be fully alive is to be in your heart.
And the more that you bring your heart, your transformed heart, your heart that's alive, the more that we can transform our parishes.
Mm.
Um, so Alex, I saw on your website too that you kind of like a model for you in your coaching is really talking about relationship with God or identity and then mission. Can you share a little bit about how that informs your coaching style and your work with priests?
Mhm, absolutely. So I know it's common in a lot of different aspects of the church right now. Institute of Priestly Formation and Focus also talks about that, but RIM, relationship, identity, and mission, and that this is the context of how we ought to live in like the order in which we show up in the world. And so, in a very like simple way of like, it's our relationship with God from there informs us who we are and who God is. And from there is our mission of how to live out. And it's easy to get it switched around. Like, I am what I do. And so we put our identity in our mission and we try to
Mhm.
live from that, which is just a rat race. Like we can never fulfill it. And there's always questioning of like, am I good enough or am I doing it right? Or just can quickly get distracted. And so for for me and how I accompany people, is going to bringing everything into relationship with God.
Mm.
And so this could be almost the invitation of, right, the curiosity of noticing what's showing up, but then also like, what is that like when you bring that to the Lord? And or even just asking, have you brought that to the Lord? It might not even I might not even be the person or the place to be there for that connection, but just the invitation to be coming back to relationship. And then from there, and I think this has been also for the priests of like even finding out who they are as as a person, as a man, and then as a priest, and like,
Mm.
right, there's a great like the charisms inventory and such, and or even personality tests that can help give some information, but to really invite them like, oh, if you are living from relationship with the Lord and all things like that, you actually will receive the life, the energy, the passion that you desire to bring forth, like will come from that place. And how easy it is when things are busy, busy, busy. We have to go to this, go to that, that it's like you shorten your prayer or your prayers filled with
Yes.
the distractions of the things rather than receiving your identity and receiving the Lord's identity.
Yes. That's so beautiful. And then there's a way that coaching or spiritual direction can really help give accountability to that prayer time. That can really, once you get in touch with your heart, those are the things that you can bring into relationship with God. So there's just like this beautiful relationship of prayer and spiritual direction or prayer and coaching that I'm aware of my heart. I know what to bring into relationship now. I'm not hiding my heart. I'm not over busy and distracted. And so I think there's here at the IMF, we talk a lot about that relationship of spiritual direction and prayer. And I would assume the same is with coaching, right? As we're being curious and holding space for that.
Yes, I actually think about this of Father Boniface will frequently visit in class, of bringing us back to like everything is content for relationship. Like whatever is
Hmm.
coming up is the content to be brought into relationship.
Yes.
So that it's not even really a what do I need to pray about? It's just whatever is happening that's
Uh-huh.
coming up in your thoughts or in relationships or in work. Like that is the content for relationship with the Lord that you should
Exactly.
always be drawing to.
Yes. And then when you're with another who's kind of helping you see, like, oh, what is coming up?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can really, like, yeah, bring that into prayer.
Mhm. It is. It's so good. And I think it's like we said earlier, like it is the giving the space to pause, right? And
Hmm.
to self-reflect, and engage that higher thinking to then get to the heart and know that there's space for that to come forth and be brought to the Lord, uh, and that it will lead to the connection that we ultimately desire, right? That will
Hmm.
be the fruit that comes forth.
Yeah. Yes. I think, again, in my experience in the diocesan and parishes, it's really easy for clergy who are overrun by many parishes to not really live deeply in relationship because of all the responsibilities and um, so they have many relationships, but it's not always easy to find someone that you can really share your heart. And so I am really appreciating your ministry and your mission that can really hold space for that.
Yes, yes. This makes me think of when you say like living in the heart, right? If we almost can't see my hands, but like above, when you're living at this like high cortisol stress all the time,
Hmm.
and it like takes a while for you to slow down to get to your heart. And I think about the priests who have been in my life, or anybody. I don't know if you've had this experience, but the gift when somebody is listening to you and is receiving your story, and maybe it's like sad parts or hard parts of your story, and they start crying
Yes.
over your story
Hmm.
and how healing that is. It's just it's just this unreal amount of compassion of someone showing you like eh, that your story matters. And like
Mhm.
that is so hard, and that compassion is so healing. And I think about that of like the people who have, cried over parts of my story and received my story. It's like they aren't living at that high cortisol all the time.
Right.
It's like they were in their story. They were able to come into their heart for their heart to receive mine. And there's a vulnerability in that, right?
Yes.
Feel like I can be okay with what's coming up in me and know that that has space here. Like, but that's if that isn't what your experience has been, or you don't know if that's safe, right? That makes sense. But that's the fruit of when priests are well and are able to get into their heart, they then
Mm.
are able to be fathers, right? Really,
Yes. Mhm.
their spiritual fatherhood comes out in a way of like being able to grieve an injustice to their spiritual child. And that's just that heals, and that will heal the church.
Yes. Oh, I love everything that you're saying. Like, yeah, when we're in that high cortisol out of our window of tolerance, we can't enter into our heart. And I love how you said, like, it is so vulnerable. And we talk about that here at the IMF, like a vulnerable listening, that I'm taking you into my heart in such a way that I'm going to be affected by your story.
Mm.
That I'm not just like listening so you get out of my way, listen so you finish, listen to respond, listen because I have something better to say, that I actually am just with you. And isn't that who God is? Jesus, Emmanuel, God with
Mm.
us. Like we also saw Jesus weep, in the scripture. We saw him be deeply moved. And so a God who comes close, a God who's affected by us, who's in relationship with us. And so for especially in the position of a priest who is an image of a father in like a really unique way, a priest of Jesus Christ who really brings that to his flock. Like when we can have priests who are attuned and attentive, um, they bring the face and love to the Father in like real and concrete and healing ways. So it's so important to minister to their heart for their own sake. And then it's just the gift that keeps giving. Love is the gift that keeps giving, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. And I even like the distinction of that. Like it is for their own sake. Like the work that I'm doing is like, do I believe it will bless the church and make a difference? Yes. But if these priests can come to be well and in more communion with the Lord, like that's it.
Yes,
That's the gift that will bless in itself.
because they are worthy of that time, worthy of that love. And then, of course, like we said, it's the gift that keeps giving.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Alex, do you have like glory stories? Like, what kind of fruits and transformation have you seen in the priests that you're working with through your coaching and consulting?
Mm, yes. It's been fun to kind of, it's not been what I expected. It's kind of like when you go and you're like, oh, I think this is going to be really fruitful, really impactful. And then they walk away like, oh, this is actually what affected me. I'm like, oh, it's okay. All right, we'll roll with that. But I think about one of the priests who, I know he'd been a priest for 25-ish years. And it was like such a, what to me felt so simple, but for him was like so freeing of, I was walking with him, and then we also had developed a leadership team. And so him being with me as I'm modeling how to lead this leadership team. And one of the things that he brought up is like, we've been having parish council forever, and we always just start with like a Hail Mary or Glory be. And I've always felt like, man, is that like you're coming here to the church for a meeting, but it feels like a meeting that you could have with any nonprofit. And he had started then leading with Lectio Divina
Mm,
and asking some more questions to the parishioners in the leadership team in the parish council to have shared prayer together. And this was like, he came alive. He's like, this, I've wanted to walk with people in prayer, but I didn't know I had permission to do that because I felt
mm,
we have to get work done. People expect
mm.
to just have a meeting. And so for him, it was the stepping into his spiritual fatherhood
Yes.
of like, you are coming into the parish, which is God's house, and it's my responsibility to walk with you to encountering the Lord. So we're going to run these meetings different, and we're going to spend a good amount of time in prayer before we talk about the budget or anything that goes into that. So that's the first one that comes to mind of him really coming to claim his fatherhood and saying, like, we're going to pray here and I'm going to teach you how to pray.
He stepped into it and it's vulnerable. The parish council, who may not know any differently, could just be like, well, how do you have to pray so long? Like, well, he just did a quick Hail Mary. And what's this going to do? Right? Like, how is this
Right.
helpful? We have things to get done, and yet he is opening a heart space and he is helping them encounter God who is real and
Yes.
inviting them into the space and then having the courage to actually shift gears and try that out is really beautiful.
Yes. Especially, I think about this, just the great respect I have. I mean, for any priest who's going to let me come in as a 30-something woman and coach them, right? There's just an amount of humility that they take on, but especially those who have been priests longer, of like, yeah, they hold an experience and an authority in such a way. And so that vulnerability for him to be like, maybe I don't actually know how to best run this meeting and or how to best accompany others and to let me speak into that with him, and then and the vulnerability of him to let it evolve, right? Like I'm gonna try out something new, which means it's probably not gonna be awesome the first time, but like
Mhm.
we're gonna learn it and we're gonna keep trying. Incredible vulnerability and humility for that growth, which was so
Yes. Yes, I love that. Like, we're going to try it out and how much humility that takes and vulnerability.
yes. And you'd mentioned and the fear of rejection
Oh, yeah.
that I'm like, this actually, I mean, this is just human, right? But I think as a father that could relate to like actually being married, not in the priesthood, but like vulnerability to be like, I think that this is what's best for our family. And
Hmm.
I don't know how it's going to land. And I don't know if they're going to be on board. But if you like believe that this is where the Lord's calling you, like there is courage of the father to take action into that. And it's the same for a priest of his people, like as the father of this house, saying, like, I do believe that this is where the Lord's inviting us. I don't know how it's going to land. And almost not that it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter. Like if it's of the Lord and you're looking at it pastorally of how to best present that, the courage to continue in. Oh,
Hmm.
it's beautiful. And people want to follow that, and those who
Right.
are disgruntled, like they have some stuff to work through and that's okay. And we can hold space for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And how beautiful, too, again, like going back to just how fruitful accompaniment can be, that when this priest knows, like, okay, I'm going against the tide. I could risk rejection, but there's someone that believes in me, and there's someone that I can go back to, talk it through, encourage me, support me, or challenge me. Um, how much does courage grow when somebody is with us?
Oh, yes. It
Yeah.
is truly the space to be someone. I've talked it through it. I've sought counsel. Okay, we've waited out. We can try now. And I'm gonna have a place to debrief this, right? Like you're not alone in it.
Hmm.
And I think even the like, which I'm so thankful for like just continual deeper formation through IMF of the spiritual life. So for me to continually bring that into like, right, Father, you're getting ready to respond to the Lord's will, and that will make change in your parish. We can anticipate spiritual attack. Okay, what do we need to be doing to prepare for that? And
Hmm.
to know how the spiritual life works, to then, when I'm accompanying them, like, okay, yeah, we need not be surprised when all the printers break or when all of a sudden things are super chaotic. And to be like, returning to a relationship with the Lord and responding from that place.
Yes.
It's just helpful when you have someone who's like can be steady when you're going through change.
Right. Yeah. And I like how you said, like, yeah, and we can anticipate this. Like, we kind of know what's going to happen. Um, and that you can just be a steady hold steady for somebody. We have just a few minutes left, but I was kind of curious too. I love that you have started this ministry as a woman, speaking to priests, and so I was just curious how the gift of your femininity, the feminine genius, how that also is a big part of your ministry, right? The complementarity, what you can offer, your point of view. Have you found that to kind of some of the fruitfulness of that dynamic?
Yes, yes. I, um, gosh, I could speak forever on this. So I'll keep it short. But no, I do believe of like in how the Lord has made me through and through is the gift that I bring to this space, like is my feminine heart.
Mm,
And I think there's a twofold. It's because I've done a lot of work in my own healing and integration that I'm showing up in a more integrated way. So it's like a steadiness um, in the femininity that allows that space, right?
mhm,
Um, one of the priests had said to me that he was like, I almost the part of me that, how did he say it? He was like, Alex, you do such a good job of respecting the priesthood while also not afraid to call us on.
mm,
And that there's this space where it's like, but it's received well. And so that's something that's been mirrored back to me frequently of the like, you like call me on higher and you really challenge me, but I've never felt humiliated and I've never felt like threatened, but I have felt challenged. And I do think that that's the reality of like, yeah, the femininity in me and how the Lord has made me that can come up. And I'm like, they know I'm a teammate and I'm for them. And I have a depth of receptivity that can
mm,
just receive, right? Like it is like the receptivity, like whatever it is at the table, like we can hold that. And there's a gentleness in how I respond, but with a clarity. And I think that that is all wrapped up in my feminine heart that shows up to these conversations um, in a way that's, yeah, not threatening, but the priest would say like, yeah, Alex knows who she is. Like,
mm,
knows who she is, and like we know that when she comes in, um, there's just like a gentleness. I think it takes a little
mm.
edge off for them to receive.
Oh, how beautiful that your whole person, all the charisms and giftings from the Lord and your feminine heart can be such a gift in your accompaniment of priests. So,
And I think this that in that specifically is what makes it different about what I do. Like, I'm not here to help you just get your work done.
mm,
Like, I don't want you just to like be more effective in your administrative role. Like, I want you to be free and come alive. And so, if that means we need to help with some administrative tasks, great, we will do that. But like, do you know who you are in the Lord? And that like I can hold space for you to come into relationship with the Lord.
mm, so beautiful. Well, Alex, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I will put a link to your coaching website, avilacoaching.org, in the show notes so that our listeners can just check out a little bit more, see for themselves what you do. So, thank
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
yes, thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing from your heart.
Yes, of course.